England.
Ms. Moss, do you know Johnny Depp?
Yes, I do.
How do you know Mr. Depp?
I had a relationship with him.
Did there come a time when you and Mr. Depp had a romantic relationship?
Yes.
For how long, Ms. Moss, were you and Mr. Depp a romantic couple?
From 1993 to 1994 to 1998.
Ms. Moss, did there come a time when you, while you and Mr. Depp were a couple, that the two of you took a vacation together to the Golden Eye Resort in Jamaica?
Yes.
What, if anything, happened when you were in Jamaica with Mr. Depp?
We were leaving the room, and Johnny left the room before I did, and there had been a rainstorm, and as I left the room, I slid down the stairs, and I hurt my back.
How did you...
And
I apologize, Ms. Moss. Please continue.
And I screamed because I was because I didn't know what had happened to me, and I was in pain, and he came running back to help me and carried me to my room and got me medical attention.
Did Mr. Depp push you in any way down the stairs?
No.
During the course of your relationship, did he ever push you down any stairs?
No, he never pushed me, kicked me, or threw me down any stairs.
Ms. Moss, have you ever before today testified in any kind of court proceeding?
No, I have never.
Why did you decide to testify today?
Objection, Your Honor.
All right.
That's beyond the scope of what we just talked about.
All right. I'll sustain the objection.
Thank you, Ms. Moss. We have nothing further at this time. We greatly appreciate your taking the time to testify.
All right. Any cross-examination?
No, Your Honor.
All right. You're free to go. Thank you, Ms. Moss.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Dr. Curry, I just want to make sure that we all remember, you're not board certified, correct?
No, I'm not.
Okay. And you've been licensed for how long?
I've been licensed for 10 years.
Okay. And you are being paid by Mr. Depp's legal team to be here, correct?
Yes.
How much have you charged so far?
I actually don't know.
Over 100,000?
I truly don't know. I don't do my own books.
Over 200,000?
I don't know.
Over 300,000?
That would be way too much, but I do not know.
Okay. Now, just so that we all remember, you had dinner at Mr. Depp's house for 3 to 4 hours with Mr. Depp, Mr. Waldman, Mr. Chu, and Ms. Vasquez, correct?
I was interviewed. I asked if there was anything I could eat because at about 3 hours I started to get hungry. Mr. Depp then offered to order takeout for the entire team.
So you had dinner with at Mr. Depp's home with Mr. Waldman, Mr. Chu, Ms. Vasquez, and Mr. Depp, correct?
Yes.
And you had drinks as well, correct?
I actually don't know. I do remember that there were drinks.
Do you recall testifying earlier that you did have a drink, a mule something?
No, I remember testifying that there might have been a mule, a Moscow mule.
Okay, thank you. We didn't have animals there as well, right?
No animals.
Okay, that's good to know. And you talked about transparency. I just want to make sure you had several designations, expert designations and reports in this case, correct?
Yes.
And in not one of them did you disclose that you had dinner and drinks at Mr. Depp's house for 3 to 4 hours with Mr. Waldman, Mr. Chu, and Ms. Vasquez. Is that correct?
Ms. Bredehoff, you're mischaracterizing what occurred.
Dr. Curry, please answer the question. Not once did you disclose this in any of your reports,
I did not
correct?
disclose that I was interviewed as that standard procedure.
But it's true that you have never gone to a client's house to be interviewed for an expert witness position, correct?
Yes, because I never had a client that was essentially homebound because of their celebrity status.
All right. And you talked to Mr. Depp for 3 to 4 hours before taking on the role of assessing Ms. Heard and deciding whether she was suffering from any distress, correct?
I did not talk to Mr. Depp. I was talking to his legal team, and he was there to observe.
He was present for the 3 to 4
Yes.
hours. Oh, and are you saying now he just stayed silent and said nothing all day?
I don't recall what he didn't or didn't do. I was answering questions.
Okay. Now, your expertise here is limited to whether Amber Heard suffers from PTSD currently. Is that correct?
Yes, I was tasked with conducting an evaluation to
Okay,
determine
Dr.
Ms.
Curry,
Heard's mental
We're all on
status.
very, very strict time limitations
Okay.
because we've promised to get this case to the jury. So I'd really appreciate if you just answer my question rather than trying to go further,
Sure.
okay? Thank you very much. Now, after you had the dinner, you then provided a designation in February of 2021 in which you said, and this is long before you ever saw Amber Heard, correct? You said that Amber Heard, quote, exhibits patterns of behavior that are consistent with co-occurring cluster B personality disorder traits, especially borderline personality disorder, end of quote, correct?
No,
No, we went through this before.
we did.
But, and that was on the designation, was it not?
I told you last time that I did not write that.
Okay, and you don't know who did on the legal team, correct?
No.
Okay, and then I also asked you, if you may recall, whether you listened to the audio recording in which Mr. Depp taunted Amber Heard that she had a borderline personality disorder. Do you recall that?
I recall you asking me that, yes.
Did you recall listening to that audio tape?
I don't recall Mr. Depp taunting Ms. Heard. I do recall that he at some point suggested she might have that diagnosis.
Okay, and that was back in these audio tapes back when they were together, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you've never before been asked to testify or serve as an expert with respect to someone who has bipolar disorder, correct?
No, as I previously stated, that's not true.
All right. Let's get you that position. My extra copies were all distributed before. Does everybody have those?
Not up here anymore.
Okay. My apologies, but I'm going to go ahead.
Your Honor, can we approach?
All right.
I don't think it's going to happen yet. Entered the last week of Bob.
Now, you recall testifying in your deposition on March 21, 2022, correct?
Yes.
And you were under oath at that time, correct?
Yes.
And the question I just showed you on page 207, line 5, have you ever been asked to testify or serve as an expert with respect to whether someone has bipolar disorder? And your answer at that time was no, correct?
Yes, I had forgotten that case.
Okay. And have you ever been asked to testify whether anyone has behavioral or characterological conduct that suggests they may be an IPV perpetrator?
I can't, yeah, I may have. It's difficult. After about 250 cases, it's difficult to remember specifically.
All right. And have you ever been qualified as an expert in the area of IPV?
No.
And have you ever been qualified to testify as an expert in domestic abuse or violence?
Domestic.
Abuse or violence?
Yes, that's been a component of testimony.
May I approach again?
All right.
We're still on page 2.
Can I take a look? Okay.
Line 16 of page 207, have you ever been qualified as an expert in the area of IPV? Your answer on line 20 was no, under oath, correct? Then the next question, have you ever been qualified to testify as an expert in domestic abuse or violence? That and goes into page 208, line 4. The answer then under oath was no. Now, you would agree that the literature is quite clear that trauma-based symptoms such as PTSD or complex PTSD have symptoms that overlap with borderline personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder, yes?
Yes.
Okay. And you would agree that it's important to use valid and reliable measures for an accurate diagnosis, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. You chose, however, not to administer the structured clinical interview for DSM-5 personality disorders, the SCID. Is that correct?
I did.
Okay. And would you agree that that is a state-of-the-art structured clinical interview?
Not for a forensic evaluation with a sophisticated examinee.
But to determine if a personality disorder is present?
No, not in this setting.
You don't agree with that?
I do not.
And you don't agree that that is the gold standard assessment for reliable, accurate psychiatric diagnosis?
It's a good one, but for treatment settings especially.
Okay. Now, did Ms. Hurd, you said you talked about, you read all of the treatment records, right?
Yes,
Okay. Do you recall reading the treatment records for the psychologist Bonnie Jacobs, who saw Amber Heard over 5 years?
I do.
And did you see anything in Bonnie Jacobs' notes over 5 years in which she diagnosed Ms. Heard with borderline personality or histrionic personality disorder?
No.
Now, you also saw the notes of Dr. Connell Cohen, correct? Mm-hmm. And you even attended his deposition, correct?
Yes.
All right. And he saw Amber for roughly 2 years. He was part of the Dr. Kipper connection, right?
Yes.
Correct? Okay. And did you see anything in Dr. Cowan's notes, and did he say in his deposition that he diagnosed Amber Heard with borderline personality disorder or histrionic personality disorder?
I saw the symptoms clearly delineated throughout his notes and in his deposition. He does not use diagnoses, so he would not have diagnosed her.
He said specifically in his deposition he did not diagnose her with that, correct?
Yes, and he also specifically stated that he does not use diagnoses.
All right. And you also have seen Dr. Banks, Dr. Amy Banks, the psychiatrist, her deposition, correct?
Yes.
And did Dr.
Not her
Anderson-
deposition. I reviewed her notes in the transcript.
All right. Did Dr. Anderson diagnose Ms. Heard with borderline personality disorder or histrionic personality disorder?
I don't believe she provided any diagnosis since she was a couples therapist.
All right. Now, you've said quite a bit about Don Hughes, but do you remember how many years of experience Don Hughes has in IPV and domestic abuse and violence?
I know it's quite a bit.
Extensive. And she is board certified, correct?
Yes, she is.
All right. And she spent 29 hours of examination with Amber Heard, did she not?
Yes, mostly
Okay.
interviewing.
All right. And she interviewed her therapists, Bonnie Jacobs and Connell Cowell, correct?
Yes.
And she also interviewed Amber's late mother.
Yes.
Okay. And she administered 12 different tests over the period of that time, correct?
Well, as I said, the majority of those were checklists, which are inappropriate for the forensic setting.
I understand that's what you say, but she administered 12 different tests, correct?
If you want to qualify them as tests, sure.
Okay. And so you disregard, no, I'm not even going to say that. Okay. Let's go to the CAPS-5 and PTSD. Now, you assessed Ms. Heard's traumas in her life, correct?
Yes, I did
Okay.
give her an instrument to assess for any trauma exposure throughout the entire lifespan.
Yes, that's fine. And you wrote that Ms. Heard's exposure to a traumatic event, namely one of the sexual assaults by Mr. Depp, more than satisfied this requirement. Did you not write that in your notes?
That is not what I wrote in my notes. Do you have my notes? So we
And
can
you
look at them?
administered a structured clinical interview based on that trauma, correct?
Not exactly. It's not quite right.
Okay. Now, Dr. Hughes administered a full intimate partner violence assessment, correct?
That's not a psychological assessment. We can't assess for intimate partner violence. That's an event.
Dr. Hughes administered a full intimate partner violence assessment,
She
correct?
stated that, and that's actually something I'm rebutting today.
Okay, and you reviewed her psychological testing?
I sure did, yes.
Okay, and are you aware that in September 2019, Ms. Heard had a trauma-based symptom on many of those valid tests?
Can you be a little bit more specific? Many of those valid tests, which tests are you talking
Do
about?
you have a recollection of that, September 2019?
She administered all of her testing in September 2019, so I'm not sure which one, oh, except for the CAPS 5, which was 10 days after mine in 2021.
Now, Dr. Hughes clinically evaluated those symptoms and established that Ms. Heard does have PTSD from the totality of the intimate partner violence by Mr. Depp.
That.
Correct?
That's what she stated, yes.
Okay. Now, Dr. Anderson's clinical notes that said Amber had come to
Objection, hearsay.
I haven't even asked the question yet, Your Honor.
Are you going to read her notes?
Well, no, actually, I wasn't going to read her notes. I was
okay.
going to ask a particular question.
Okay.
You talked about danger. Do you recall that in your testimony?
Yes.
All right. Now, if a patient comes to you as a couples therapist with two black eyes, would you assess that there may be a potential danger there?
Sure.
Okay. Did you read Dr. Anderson's notes?
I believe I did.
Now, you administered the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory 2, the MMPI-2. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And you used that to determine whether Amber had PTSD, right?
Not by itself, but it was a part of the data.
Okay. And in the 60 to 70 T-score range for that test, which, quote, deliberate attempts to mislead are uncommon, end quote. Isn't that correct?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
In the T-score section of that, for which assesses deliberate attempts to mislead, do you recall? She scored a 60 on that test, correct?
So there are multiple T-scores for each scale, so I'm not sure which scale you're talking about.
Okay. Well, we can deal with that later. So you would agree that you need to follow ethics and best practices in forensic psychology, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the two primary sources are the American Psychological Association Ethical Principles and Professional Code of Conduct, right? Mm-hmm. And the American Psychological Association's Specialty Guidelines for Forensic Psychology, correct?
Yes.
And Specialty Guidelines 1.02 states that forensic practitioners, quote, strive for accuracy, impartiality, fairness, and independence, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Specialty Guidelines 1.03 states that you have to avoid a conflict of interest, correct?
Yes.
Now, in addition to not listing the 4 hours you spent with Mr. Depp, Mr. Waldman, Mr. Chu, and Ms. Vasquez, you also did not list that you spent an hour with Dr. Shah, correct?
That's incorrect.
You say that the designation said that you spent
During
an
my
hour?
deposition, I also clarified this. I didn't spend an hour with Dr. Shah. There was an introduction with the attorneys present on Zoom. My time on that call was less than 30 minutes.
Okay. But you still didn't disclose it, did you, in your reports?
No.
Okay. Now,
Because she didn't have to.
you have not been asked to testify about Ms. Heard's behavior in the context of her relationship with Mr. Depp. Is that correct?
I was asked to testify about somebody's behavioral mental status in general, so that can include behavior involved in a relationship with Mr. Depp, but not specifically.
Can you pull up day 10 of the trial testimony at page 2710? Are you able to do that, Michelle? 2710, lines 12 through 18.
May we approach?
All right. All right.
That judge is probably sitting there like, oh, for fuck's sake, here we go again.
Thank you, Michelle. Great job. Okay, does the witness also have, okay.
Yep.
So, Dr. Curry, this is your testimony from day 10 in this case, and if you can look at page 2710, line 13. Now, my question was, now, is it your testimony under oath today that you have not been asked to testify concerning Ms. Heard's behavior in the context of her relationship with Mr. Depp, including any abuse? And your answer under oath to this jury that day was, that's correct.
Yes.
Correct?
I still agree with that question.
All right. And you have not made any determinations, including any opinions, that Ms. Heard abused Mr. Depp or Mr. Depp abused Ms. Heard, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And in fact, you said that's outside the scope.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Of psychology.
And you cannot testify whether Amber Heard suffered any emotional distress as a result of any of the defamatory comments that she has alleged Mr. Waldman made through Mr. Depp, or Mr. Depp made through Mr. Waldman, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
Do you want me to read my response?
What's
Sure.
the objection? I'm sorry.
What
Hold on, Dr.
sorry,
Curry.
Your Honor.
That's okay. What's the objection? Are you on approach? Okay.
They're two different questions. After this, I will show you what I was on about.
Now, you have not rendered any opinion as to whether Amber Heard exhibits patterns of behavior that would suggest her allegations of abuse against Mr. Depp are false. Would you agree?
No. I mean, yes, I would agree with that.
Oh, thank you. And you have not, no, that's right. That's all I've got. No further questions.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Redirect.
You were asked about the skid.
Yes.
What's that?
It's a structured clinical interview. It's for rendering a diagnosis. It's best for treatment because you're asking direct questions of the examinee and about symptoms. So if you have an examinee who has a tendency to minimize, you're not going to get much information.
Why didn't you use it?
Because, well, first of all, I had a limited amount of time for my evaluation, and I had already had to use, just to complete the interview was extremely time consuming. And I had to even restructure it into handouts so that I could keep Ms. Heard on track. I determined based on that, so this is where you would make an inference. So because I was having difficulty getting direct answers to my questions from Ms. Hurd, I had determined that creating forms of those questions would be a better use of the time, which it was, and then I further deduced that adding on the structured clinical interview would probably be unproductive, given that I had limited time and needed to use the best, most reliable methods for getting information in that time.
You were asked about the APA specialty guidelines,
Yes.
specifically 1.02 and
Yes.
1.03. Have you complied with them?
I have.
No further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Curry, you can have a seat in the courtroom.
you,
You're
Your
free to
Honor.
go. Thank you, ma'am. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and take our morning recess for 15 minutes. Do not discuss the case and do not do any outside research, okay? All right. Just for planning purposes, Sammy asked Mr. Tobin to be here as early as noon, just in case with the fluid of the trial. I'm not sure what time we can get to that motion, so.
That's fine with us.
Okay, just to let you know. They need to work on that. They're going to find out who the next witness is. So let's go ahead and take a recess until 10:55, okay? All right, thank you. Thank you.
Hey guys, I'll be back in 15, okay?
All right, are we ready for the jury?
No, Your Honor, we do have an issue we'd like to raise.
Okay, sure.
She's like, oh, for fuck's sake, here we go again. I think it's Kate Moss's time. Because remember Amber said something about Kate Moss bringing down the stairs and all that stuff. I honestly think Kate Moss is there saying it never happened. It never actually happened that way. And they're sitting in the back going, ha 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 ha. For God's sake. This is long. Put this on until it's ready. So guys, what do you think of all of this Amber Heard and Johnny Depp stuff? Okay, now this was meant to start like 50 minutes ago. And Johnny Depp's sitting there doodling as normal. She's probably saying, "Oh, you're very lucky that I took this case on." Blah 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 blah. I don't think that's Kate Moss. Hey Siri, look up Kate Moss. Yeah, I ain't got Kate Moss. Sorry, this video is, that's, whatever this is taking for fucking ever.
All right, your next witness. I'm sorry, let's get the jury first, right? All right, you ready for the jury? right, thank you. Are we ready for the next witness, or do you want to?
Yes, we call Mr. Depp.
Okay. All right. So just a reminder, you're still under oath, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Depp.
Good morning.
We heard a lot about some statements that Mr. Waldman made. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And Mr. Waldman is your attorney or was your attorney?
Yes.
Could we please pull up Defendant's Exhibit 1245? And this is already in evidence, so permission to please publish. If we could scroll down to the second page. Mr. Depp, do you see the statement here attributed to Mr. Waldman?
Yes, I do.
When's the first time that you saw this statement?
All right.
He didn't even get a word. He did not even get a freaking word out. It was just like,
We can pull the exhibit back up. Thank you. Mr. Depp, when is the first time that you saw this statement by Mr. Waldman?
The first time that I ever saw this statement was in August. It was when the piece was This is the first time that I saw any of these statements.
Can we please pull up Defendant's Exhibit 1246? This is also already in evidence. Thank you. If we could scroll down to the second page, or the third perhaps. Thank you. Mr. Depp, do you see this statement that's attributed to Mr. Waldman here?
I do.
And when is the first time that you saw these statements?
Same, when the countersuit was filed.
And could we please go to Defense Exhibit 1247? And again, this is already in evidence. And if we could scroll down, please. Thank you. Mr. Depp, do you see the statement attributed to Mr. Waldman?
I did, yes.
And when's the first time that you saw this statement?
This is the same. It's the counterclaim to August 2020.
After you saw these statements for the first time, did you form an understanding as to where they appeared?
I didn't, as to where they had appeared, these statements.
In what publication?
No, off the bat, I didn't know exactly. It just seemed like a lot of word salad to me. I didn't know where they'd come from, or, I mean, where they ended up. Or...
Mr. Depp, do you recall Ms. Heard testifying that you did not assist her in getting her role in Aquaman?
Yes, I do, yes.
And what is your response to that?
It's not exactly true.
Do you know when Ms. Heard first auditioned for Aquaman?
Strangely, I know the date and everything. Well, no, yes, I do know the date, because I was scheduled with my band, the Hollywood Vampires. We had done 2 shows at the Roxy, which is a place in Los Angeles, to rehearse for we were invited to play at the Rock in Rio concert, which is a huge rock and roll festival. So we did the 2 shows to go to Rio and play there. Miss Heard had wanted to come with me, and Whitney, her sister, had come as well. While we were there in Rio, we were rehearsing, getting ready for the show. Miss Heard informed me that she would have to get back to Los Angeles for an audition, meaning it's basically after our 2-hour show or whatever, we would have to get on the plane immediately to make it back to Los Angeles for this audition. And that audition was at Warner Brothers. It was whatever film it was.
And when were you performing at the Rock in Rio?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that was I believe it was the 24th of September.
In what year?
That was 15.
What do you understand happened after Ms. Heard auditioned for Aquaman?
After Ms. Heard's audition, or possibly auditions, for Warner Brothers and I suppose the creative team, Ms. Heard had expressed to me that the film was going to be, Warner Brothers had said that the film was going to be shooting in Australia. And Australia was for Ms. Heard, that was a potential problem, which...
Objection, Your Honor. Your approach?
Okay.
Here we go again.
I apologize, Mr. Depp. Could you please continue? What happened after Miss Heard auditioned for Aquaman?
I was informed by Ms. Heard that the film was going to be shooting in Australia, and that was of concern to her, and because it was of concern to Warner Brothers. So she asked if I would, because I'd had a multi, for a few years I'd had a multi-film deal with Warner Brothers, and so we'd been in business together. So I knew these people. I'd been on films with them. So she asked me if I would speak to them. I made a phone call and I spoke to.
Objection, hearsay, Your Honor.
I don't believe he said anything. I think he was going to say who he spoke to.
All right, we'll see. Overruled at this point.
I spoke to the three upper echelon Warner executives: Kevin Tsujihara, Sue Kroll, and Greg Silverstein. And I told them that...
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
All right, I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
What was the result of you speaking with those individuals?
Well, I can only say that ultimately she did get the job in the film. So hopefully I suppose I had curbed their worries to some degree.
Mr. Depp, do you recall Ms. Heard testifying that she saw you consume 8 to 10 MDMA pills while you were in Australia in March of 2015?
Yes, I do remember that.
How
I
many?
also remember her saying that I took a handful.
Objection beyond the scope. Question.
Sorry, that was extra
All
residue.
right, I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
How many times have you done MDMA in your life, Mr. Depp?
Actually, not that many times. I would say in my lifetime, maybe in my lifetime, MDMA 6, 7, maybe.
And how much MDMA have you done on those occasions?
Not enough to properly. Well, not enough to properly experience what the chemicals are supposed to do to you.
Have you ever consumed 8 to 10 MDMA pills at once?
No, ma'am. No, I have not.
And why is that?
Because I'd be dead. I'm pretty sure I'd be dead. I think one would die, yes, and probably rather quickly.
Mr. Depp, I'd like to show you some pictures from the home in Australia that Ms. Heard testified about.
Sure.
Could we please pull up Defendant's Exhibit 1817, which is already in evidence? Mr. Depp, do you recognize what's depicted in this photograph?
Yes, I do. That's the downstairs bar of the house we rented in Australia.
And can you please show the jury where you were sitting when Ms. Heard threw the 2 vodka bottles at you?
If I touch this thing, it'll make a
Yes,
mark.
it will.
Yes. Okay. So this chair, that one here, was over here. And it was in pretty much when I was turned around they were on a swivel, so when I was turned around towards the bar, I'm facing the bar. When I turned around this way, this chair here was in pretty much exactly this same position as this chair. It was when I was facing Miss Heard, who was, let's say she was, if you're looking at the photograph, she would be about here.
Could you draw a line in the direction where Miss Heard was relative to where you were sitting?
Yes, absolutely. So if I'm sitting here, she was over here, like back here.
Approximately how far away from Miss Heard, from you was Miss Heard, if you can recall?
I would say it was probably 10, 12, 15 feet, maybe 10 feet, 12 feet.
And approximately where was your hand when the vodka bottle hit it?
It was leaning. My arm was leaning on the marble bar, right there where the imaginary seat is, and leaning, kind of just leaning back and looking at Miss Heard. She just walked away with the second bottle. She walked this way when she threw the first bottle, which is actually visible
Can
in
you
the
please circle
background on
where
the
the
floor.
first? Yeah. Could you please circle where the first bottle
Oh,
is?
sorry, excuse me. Yeah. All that is the exploded first bottle that went past my head, and the second bottle hit right up here where my hand was resting on the marble bar.
Can we please pull up Defendant's Exhibit 1820?
Finally, we get to see.
Mr. Depp, do you recognize what's depicted in this photograph?
This is behind that very bar.
And what do you see on the floor in this picture?
Oh, wrong glass, I'll tell you.
I see what looks to me like some kind of napkin. It looks sullied, soiled, blood, I don't know. And I see glass in the corner, blood obviously on the floor, and a towel leaning up on something.
Do you know how that bloody tissue got on the floor?
My best guess.
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Do you know how the blood got on the floor, Mr. Depp?
I know how the blood got on the floor. It came from my dripping finger, so that's why the tissue is. I'm 99.9% sure, since it is. Looks like it's got blood on it as well. Is what I held my finger with.
Do you see the wall on the left side of the photograph?
I do.
Was there a wall-mounted phone on that wall?
On the left side of the photo. No, I didn't. No. Not that I recall, no.
Could we please pull up Defendant's Exhibit 394, which is already in evidence?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Depp, do you recognize this text message?
I do.
And what is this message?
It's a text to Dr. Kipper. I'm sorry, just reading through. Yeah, this is my text to Dr. Kipper, who had just happened to be in town, telling him that I've had it and that I just lost a fingertip.
How long after your finger had been injured did you send this text message, if you can recall?
It's hard to tell because when I look at the timestamp, it says delivered 3/7/2015, 5 o'clock. But I know that because of Australia time, it was the 8th, and it was probably, the whole thing lasted probably until about 2 p.m. Or so, when that was when Kipper was called, Jerry was brought in, Jerry Judge, sorry, excuse me.
So do you have an estimate as to how long after your finger had actually been injured that you sent this message?
I don't think it was very long. I think it was probably within the next, I'm sure it was in the next half hour or so. I would have had to sneak into a bathroom, lock myself in to type this out.
And how were you able to send this text message to Dr. Kipper in the state that you were in?
Well, he wasn't available at the time, so just sort of thumb your way through, don't you?
How long after sending this text message did you see Dr. Kipper?
I don't recall it. I think it took them probably 30 minutes or more, 30 to 40 minutes to get there.
And what did Dr. Kipper do when he first arrived at the home?
Get it back.
The first thing he wanted to do is inspect the damage of my finger and try and figure out exactly what had happened, how it happened.
And what did you tell Dr. Kipper about how your finger had been injured?
Objection, Your Honor.
May we
Your
approach?
say,
All
we've
right,
discussed
that's
this
fine.
several times.
Let's go.
Mr. Depp, when Dr. Kipper was treating your finger, what did you tell him about how your finger became injured?
I told him that there was obviously, I mean, when you saw the damage in the house and everything, the blood everywhere, I mean, obviously there was serious damage done. There would be no point in lying to the man. He'd been through it with me and Ms. Heard before. I told him that she had thrown a bottle of vodka and smashed and cut my finger off, the tip of my finger, just but a good chunk. I miss it.
Mr. Depp, you heard Ms. Heard testify about an alleged incident of abuse on your honeymoon. Do you remember that?
I remember her testifying to that, yes.
And when did you and Ms. Heard go on your honeymoon together?
I believe it was somewhere in the neighborhood of August, because I had just finished the film. Maybe end of July, August. I'm not quite good on the exact date.
Do you recall the year?
It was 2015, I believe.
And where did you and Ms. Heard go on your honeymoon?
We took the Orient Express from Bangkok, Thailand to Singapore.
And what happened while you and Ms. Heard were together on the Orient Express?
There were times when it was very agreeable, very nice. And then there were times when something had become dissatisfactory for her, and she would start the rant, the blooming of a fight would be on deck there, and at one point it didn't. I mean, I don't remember it lasting long at all. I just remember that I took a pretty good shot to the face, to the eye, to somewhere up here. So I had a bit of a shiner. But the.
So Amber, you were the abuser. I would never know about that.
Fine again, and we'd go to dinner, and it was all fine.
Did Ms. Heard ever apologize to you for giving you
Of
the
course she
shiner?
did.
I don't recall.
Can we please pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 162, which is already in evidence? Mr. Depp, do you recognize this photograph?
I do. It was with the chef and the maitre d' and the staff were asking if they could take a photo with us, and they'd been very kind. They'd given us a
And
private dinner card.
So where was this photograph taken?
That was in the, that looks like it's in the, yes, that's towards the back of the Orient Express. That's in the back train bar compartment. And just out back, you could smoke on the sort of caboose or whatever.
And what, if any, injuries do you have in this photograph?
I think the eye's a little bit bugged out, if you will. It's, yeah.
How did that happen?
These things could happen very quickly if you disagreed
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive. She just asked, how did that happen?
I believe he was about to explain.
Well, I'll state the objection.
Okay. So, Mr. Depp, specifically, how did the injury in this photograph occur?
I'm sure it hit me. Is that better?
Does this picture accurately reflect what you looked like on that date?
I don't look at myself much, but it certainly looks like me with a black eye. Yeah.
Does this picture appear to have been photoshopped in any way?
See the black eye.
No, I think it would be difficult to photograph or to start getting into sort of digital processing with a number of people in the shot, especially in a wide shot.
Could we please pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 1301? And this is a new one, Your Honor, so this is not in evidence.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Depp, do you recognize what's reflected in this photograph?
Yes, this is the staff. It's the manager and his staff at the Raffles Hotel in Singapore. And before we left, they asked if they could take a photograph with us.
And when was this photograph taken?
Well, that would have been, we were off the Orient Express. We stayed in Raffles, I believe, a couple of few days. And then from there we flew to San Francisco.
So this photograph was taken after the photograph we just looked at?
This photograph was taken after the photograph in the dining car of the train, yes.
Your Honor, I'd move Plaintiff's Exhibit 1301 into evidence.
All right, any objection?
Oh, happy honeymoon. So it's
Any
31st of October.
any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, 1301 is in evidence, can be published to the jury.
Mr. Depp, what, if any, injuries do you see on your face in this photograph?
I see pretty much the same.
Black eye.
I see that the area in here has been is swollen and yeah, there's a
And
bit
this
of a
is when
shine.
Amber just realised, oh, fuck, we're
Thank you. We can take this down. Mr. Depp, do you recall Ms. Heard testifying that she punched you in the staircase incident because she thought of Kate Moss in the stairs?
Oh, that was interesting.
Do I remember her saying that?
Yes.
Yes, I do. 3 times. Yes, I do.
Do you have any understanding as to what Ms. Heard was referring to?
Yes, I do.
And
As Kate Moss, Kate testified, it was many, many years ago. And exactly what happened is what she said happened. I recall speaking with Ms. Heard about that very incident because of the downpouring of rain, because it was raining very heavily that day that Kate slipped. And I recalled the story to her.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
May we
shut.
approach Your Honor?
Okay.
It isn't hearsay if she's said it.
Please continue, Mr. Depp. What did you tell Ms. Hurd about the staircase?
I know,
with
shut
Kate
up.
Moss?
I'll make it easy for Mr. Rottenborn.
What to be fired again?
Miss Hurd took the story and turned it into a very ugly incident, all in her mind. There was never a moment where I
Johnny
pushed
Depp.
Kate down any set of stairs.
Oh, Kate
Yet
Moss is
she's
on
spewed this
later on
3
today.
times before.
Objection, Your Honor. Ms. Hurd simply testified that she had heard a rumor, and that's
Bullshit.
Sir, hold on. This
Sorry.
objection. I'll overrule the objection.
misstates the facts and evidence.
I'll overrule the objection.
Sorry, I was drawn by Mr. Rottenborn's voice. What was you like? Was it?
So what specifically had you actually told Ms. Hurd about the incident with
Johnny
Ms.
Depp's
Moss
so
and the
funny.
stairs?
Very simply that we were in Jamaica. I had left our bungalow about 3 minutes prior to her. I was standing outside, and suddenly rain starts just coming down.
No,
like
she's
it's,
not.
You know, monsoon.
Meant to be the day.
Then I remember looking and seeing Kate coming out the door, and there were 3 little wooden stairs, and she slipped, her legs went up, and she landed directly on her coccyx and her lower back. So, and she was obviously physically
This is
in
live.
pain, and she was hurt, she was crying, so I ran over and grabbed her to make sure she was all right. That's it. That's all I ever. That's the whole story. But then the rumor of it, I'd never heard a rumor of that before Miss Hurd grabbed hold of it.
I feel fat.
It's like that. I'm sorry.
Mr. Depp, we heard testimony from Ms. Hurd's sister, Whitney, during this trial. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And how would you describe your relationship with Whitney when you were in a relationship with Ms. Hurd?
I liked Whitney very much. Initially, I mean, when I first met her, I liked her very much, and grew to love Whitney very much, because I always, it seemed, Whitney, Amber's sister, Whitney, seemed to always get the sort of dirty end of the stick. And
watch it tonight after.
I felt bad for her for that, because it wasn't new. It had been there for life, and that was seemed pretty obvious. So I took to Whitney very, very quickly, very easily. She was a very sweet kid. She was wonderful.
What do you mean that Whitney got the dirty end of the stick?
Because it was on at 9, right? And then the morning recess was quarter, like 11.
It was kind of a
half 11
strange
or something,
combination
something like that.
of loving sister, trusted sister and friend, and then lackey, and then, you know, either the punching bag or the dartboard, or the recipient of some rather demeaning, ugly
Johnny Depp's innocent. I'm Team Johnny.
words, or she would have wine thrown in her
There's
face.
just too much shit
And who was the source of those demeaning
going on
words
about
and the
Amber.
line that you just referenced?
on Miss Hurd.
Amber heard her sister.
And how do you know that?
Well, I witnessed quite a lot of it. The wine in the face was something that happened in New York, which I think that even made it into the papers. I believe that even made it into the papers. It was in an elevator.
How did you first learn about that incident?
Miss Hurd told me in detail.
That actually did make it in the
What
papers.
else did you observe of Miss Hurd and her sister Whitney's interactions during your relationship with Miss Hurd?
They were just constantly up and down, but I could sense, I could feel that Whitney
This is the
trying to please her sister, trying to be up to snuff.
This is the end of the week. I mean, this is the
just seemed
second
like she got
or
shot
third
down.
Your
last.
Honor, it's gone beyond the scope of the.
Oh, here we go.
And his foundation for knowledge of that.
Your Honor, I asked what he observed, between them. I think this is responsive to that.
And his testimony as to what Whitney felt is.
I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
Okay.
Of course you did.
Did you ever see Miss Hurd physically attack Whitney?
No,
Here we
I've
go.
never seen any full-on blowouts, physical blowouts
We're
between
going to
them.
go. Objection.
Tons of verbal
Objection
blowouts.
beyond the scope.
Oh wait, that's
Overruled.
I've certainly seen Miss Hurd grab Whitney, push her around. There were a number. There were half a dozen times when some of us, whoever was in the general vicinity, would have to leave. This is at Orange, when Whitney and Amber were living at Orange. Whitney and her boyfriend at the time, Sean Krajewski, and we had to leave the apartment and
Why
wait
was
in the car while they fought.
And when you say fought, do you
Argued, I
mean
think.
physically or?
Physical.
And when you said Miss Hurd would push Whitney around, do you mean that physically push her or metaphorically?
Both.
You heard Whitney testify that she lived in Penthouse 4 at the Eastern Columbia building for a time, correct?
That is correct, yes.
How did Whitney come to live in Penthouse 4?
My recollection when Whitney first came to stay at the Eastern Columbia building in Penthouse 4 was she and her boyfriend, Sean, had broken up. And she needed a place to go. And so Amber asked if she could stay in Penthouse 4, and I said, well, of course, of course, you know.
How long did Whitney live in Penthouse 4?
I'm the same with you.
It was well over a
It's
year
just
on
back
and
on
off.
that.
Did you ever ask Whitney to move out of Penthouse 4?
No, I did not, no.
Why did Whitney ultimately move out of Penthouse 4?
Objection, foundation.
It's his apartment, Your Honor. He was living there.
Oh, overruled.
Whitney moved out of Penthouse 4
I just want him to go. I just want him to come back.
long
Pirates.
before the
Never going to happen.
marriage. And it was due to an argument that Ms. Hurd and Whitney had, which had to do with Whitney working at the Art of Elysium with Jennifer Howell and those people. And Amber asked her to leave. get out.
Where did Whitney live when she moved out of Penthouse 4?
My understanding is she went to live with Jennifer Howell.
Your Honor, I know you anticipated having a motion at noon.
You can keep going, that's
Okay.
fine. We can. How much longer in direct do you have?
I have a bit.
Okay, that's okay. Go ahead.
Mr. Depp, do you recall hearing testimony during Ms. Heard's case from Mr. Mandel?
Yes, I do.
And who is that?
Mr. Mandel is my former business manager of 17 and a half years, who at a certain point I discovered had been embezzling quite a lot of money. So I had to take action against him and he and my lawyer of 17 and a half years, as they were in cahoots, as it were. And so yes, Joel Mandel is and they settled their case with me. They made their settlement. But yes, it was the big. That was a very Joel Mandel is a very bitter man who ended up with a lot of money that I worked hard for over the years.
Do you recall Mr. Mandel testifying in this case that you do not spend very much money on charity?
That I don't, sorry?
That you do not spend very much money on charity?
Objection, Your Honor.
Just want to
Approach.
approach. Okay.
Now here we go again. Objection hearsay.
Mr. Depp, just to remind you, my question was, what is your response to Mr. Mandel's testimony that you do not spend very much on charity?
My response to that is Mr. Mandel is a very bitter man, and one thing about that, myself personally, with regard to charity donations, sending money to a charity, I prefer, I would rather that my name were not on it. I don't want the name to be the important thing or the thing that people talk about. So when I donate money, I donate without my name being involved.
Anonymously. What is the right thing to do?
Because I don't see that that's important, my name being there in terms of money. Now, if I am able to visit hospitals, or if I'm able to meet with Make-A-Wish children, I've held on to the relationships that I've held on to within the Make-A-Wish Foundation and the Children's Hospital and various other places. Then obviously my name is involved. When we held premieres in Leicester Square for several films, Charlie and the
Objection, Your Honor.
Chocolate Factory.
Again, beyond the scope of his response to Mr. Mandel's testimony.
I believe this is in response to Mr. Mandel.
I'll overrule the objection.
So basically, when it was a public, let's call it donation or whatever, I would talk to the studio, I would talk to Disney, I would talk to Warner Brothers, I would talk to whoever the studio was, well before the premiere, and make the premiere a benefit that would, once we did what we benefited, we did a benefit premiere for Great Ormond Street Hospital. We did a couple of benefit premieres for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. I mean, if you can turn a premiere with that many thousands and thousands and thousands of people there into a benefit, it works and it helps, but it wasn't presented under my name, you know. It was Disney's doing this or Warner Brothers is doing this. I'm not looking for the pat on the back, as it were. If I can make it happen, great. But I don't need the pat on the back. I don't need the adulation. I don't need the attention.
Did you hear Ms. Heard testify that one of the charities she donated a portion of your divorce settlement to was the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles?
Yes.
What is your relationship with the CHLA?
Objection, Your Honor. Irrelevant and to the issue.
May we
just
approach, Your Honor?
discussed.
Here we go again. And the lesson of Amber Heard, or Hard, or whatever you want. This is a yep.
Well, no fucking shit. Well, no fucking shit.
Who the hell are you? What, did you just shut yourself, Dean? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not. And this is for you, Amber, right now.
Mr. Depp, what is your relationship with the CHLA?
I've had a relationship with the CHLA for probably 20 years or so.
And what's just the nature of that relationship?
Well, Well, since you know, sometimes there are Make-A-Wish kids who are in the hospital there, and that their wish is to.
Objection, Your Honor.
Your Honor, may we approach?
Okay, sure.
Mr. Depp, I'd like to take you back to exactly 6 years prior to this week, the week of May 21st through May 27th, 2016. What happened at the beginning of that week?
May 21st.
Excuse me, May 20th.
May 20th. We're talking 2016 here.
Yes.
May 20th, the afternoon of May 20th, afternoon, evening, my mom made her exit. She'd been fighting cancer numerous times and for many years, and she fought all the way to the end. And so my mother passed away on the 20th of May. Which does bring instant perspective into one's mind. I spoke to Amber that night. I called her on the telephone, explained to her that my mom had passed, Betty Sue had passed, and that I thought that the best thing we could do was to that I file for
Objection, Your Honor.
divorce.
Hearsay. What Mr. Depp told Ms. Heard.
We can move on, Your
Okay,
Honor.
yes, ma'am.
Mr. Depp, what happened at the end of that week on May 27th, 2016?
May 27th, my daughter's birthday. May 27th, I was not in Los Angeles. I was on the way to on tour, and that was when Miss Heard went for the restraining order. And oh yeah, also that was the day that Alice Through the Looking Glass, a film I'd done, was opening.
Did Ms. Heard know that you were out of town on May 27th?
Yes.
And how would she have known that?
Well, I told her I was going on tour. I mean, that was well established.
How long were you going to be out of town on that tour?
2 to 3 months.
And did Ms. Heard know how long you'd be out of town?
I don't know if she knew exactly how long I'd be out of town, but it was a pretty extensive tour of Europe.
How did Ms. Heard's actions on May 27th, 2016 affect you?
Changed everything.
Objection, Your Honor.
Oh,
Relevance
it didn't change
in this
everything?
lawsuit.
Sorry.
Sir, if you could wait till the objection, please.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Relevance.
Tourette's.
Your Honor, this is one of the key
you want to
dates.
approach.
And they're approaching again. Oh, that's just fucking. Not just like the thing possible, and it's over. Johnny Depp won.
It's unbelievable, Jeff!
And this is. Can't really have put that on. Follow the Law and Crime Court Junkie podcast. You can't say that. UK would not allow you to say junkie.
Mr. Depp, what has it been like for you to listen to Ms. Heard's testimony at this trial?
I'm sorry.
What has it been like for you to listen to Ms. Heard's testimony at this trial?
Objection, relevance, Your Honor.
Oh, overruled.
Insane. It's insane to hear heinous accusations of violence, sexual violence, that she's attributed to me, that she's accused me of. I don't think anyone enjoys having to split themselves open and tell the truth. But there are times when one just simply has to, because it's gotten out of control. Horrible. Ridiculous, humiliating, ludicrous, painful, savage, unimaginably brutal, cruel, and all false. All false. I wanted no human being is perfect, certainly not. None of us. But I have never in my life committed sexual battery, physical abuse, all these.
The real Johnny. And this is the real Johnny Depp, ladies and gentlemen.
Of me committing these things and living with it for 6 years and waiting to be able to bring the truth out. So this is not easy for any of us. I know that. But no matter what happens, I did get here, and I did tell the truth, and I have spoken up for what I've been carrying on my back reluctantly for 6 years.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right. Did you want to take lunch at this point, or just, okay, all right, let's do that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and take lunch this time. Do not discuss this case with anybody, and don't do any outside research, okay? Thank you. And don't break anything on your way out. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So just a reminder that since you are back on the stand, do not discuss this case with anybody, to include your attorneys at this point, okay? If you could just have a seat back there. We do have some other issues to take care of. Before we take care of the third-party motion, could I have the attorneys come forward on our...
So what do we do for now then? This is early for the lunch break. They'll find the Kate Moss thing and let you do that for an hour. Yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll find the Kate Moss.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tobin. If you could just come to the center. Okay.
May I approach?
Sure.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. Go to the other side. All right.
Good to see you.
Mr. Tobin, if you want to.
Certainly, thank you.
I got to make this relatively short, as you can understand, but I wanted to take up your motion. I have read your motion and the declaration and everything attached to it.
The motion to go to lunch.
And I have reviewed it, so I'd
We're
rather you
talking
not
about a motion
regurgitate
to
that
go to lunch.
based on our time limit, but anything you wish to
Anyway,
add to
moving
that
on.
is fine. If you wanted, if I could focus you
She's great,
a
she's
little
really
bit.
good, and
Okay.
there.
All right.
And that
yes, sir.
covered there.
As far as
Or that covered there.
your comments about
Yeah.
Virginia Rule of Evidence 2:508, that's a criminal rule of evidence, so that's not your
Understood.
not your strongest argument. And as far as what goes on is when the or if the witness testifies, whether it's hearsay or it's
Oh, maybe up there.
third-party
Oh, we've
knowledge,
heard
that's
that.
something I'll deal with at trial. So again, not what I'm concerned with. As far as Supreme Court Rule 314, which I would like you to talk a little bit about that as far as intervention. And I got to tell you where I'm at right now. The concern, the issue I have with the argument is intervention obviously would make you a plaintiff or defendant in the case, and it has to deal with an issue that's germane to this case, and this is a defamation case. So if you could just tailor your argument to that issue, sir.
Sure, I'm happy to address the intervention. For the record, Your Honor, Charles Tobin from the law firm of Ballard Spahr,
Yes,
here
sir.
representing TMZ, which is the publisher of news and entertainment for the celebrity and entertainment industry. And Your Honor, we're seeking to intervene simply to protect the relationship between reporters and their sources when it comes to reporting news in the public interest. We, as the court noted, we really don't have a dog in this hunt as far as Mr. Depp, Ms. Heard. We're really here purely on the First Amendment-based issue of reporters' privilege and reporters and their sources. Your Honor, the intervention rule, as the court is aware, allows intervention by anybody where the issue is germane to the subject matter of the proceeding. And certainly, Your Honor, the purported testimony, the proffered testimony of a former employee of TMZ who purports to be in a position to disclose confidential information learned during during the operation of journalism, during his work as a journalist, is a germane issue that is being raised in this case. And Your Honor, we would point the court to the Tafts, Fletcher, Malden, and Reed versus Southern Bank and Trust case, 213 Virginia Circuit, Lexus, 253. It's a Norfolk Circuit Court decision from 2013. And there it was an interpleader action. The funds had been interpleaded into the court by two trust companies that were fighting over it. And the man who had sold his property, who had no interest in the funds themselves, intervened in the case because he was uncertain as to his liability for excess funds, which was an issue that was not directly in litigation between the two parties. It was not part of the cause of action between the two trusts fighting over the money that had been pleaded into the court. The circuit court held that certainly the rights of that man was going to be affected by the decision making in the case. He would be prejudiced if he didn't have an opportunity to intervene, and no party was in the position to assert his rights. And so similarly here, Your Honor, TMZ is a news organization. It routinely accepts information, as is common in journalism, under exchanges of promises of confidentiality. If it is not able to intervene in this action, and neither of the parties is going to be in a position to assert the reporter's privilege, it is TMZ's journalist privilege that we're talking about, then the rights are certainly going to be prejudiced.
But if the witness, in all the cases, and I reviewed the cases that you had, in those cases the witness was compelled to testify and came and was forced to testify, so there was an issue about the privilege of the witness. It's my understanding in this case this witness wants to testify and is not under subpoena.
He has been subpoenaed, Your Honor.
That's incorrect, Your Honor. He's voluntarily. If a subpoena from this court would not be enforceable.
Okay.
Your Honor, I have a copy of a subpoena that was entered last night compelling Mr. Tremaine to give testimony in this case. And so he is coming under a compulsion under subpoena.
Well, and if he takes a stand and he asserts some sort of privilege, then that's something I will deal with at that time.
Sure, but I'm here because of the scenario where he may not assert that privilege.
Right, exactly. And that's why I'm saying all your cases that you showed were the opposite, where they did assert the privilege.
Well, it is a unique situation.
Right, and I understand you might have some issues with a former employee, and you have some avenues to go deal with that.
But once he testifies and the privilege is waived, we have lost our opportunity to intervene and
I
to
understand,
intercede.
sir. All right.
And, Your Honor, the privilege, I know, Your Honor, you said you read the case law.
I did.
Appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
But the privilege has been recognized by the Virginia Supreme Court in the Brown case and applied by the circuit courts uniformly. It is a very important underpinning of the relationship between reporters and sources and reporters and the public. Without the ability to enforce its promises by current employees or former employees, a news organization will have absolutely no control over being able to enforce its promises. And so we would ask the court to permit us to intervene and to assert the privilege that belongs to TMZ, which is the organization, after all, Your Honor, that would be responsible to the source if the privilege were waived.
All right, I understand, Mr. Tobin, your argument. I appreciate it very much. Okay, did the parties wish to be heard?
Good morning, good afternoon, Your Honor. I'd like to begin where Your Honor began. As a threshold matter, the court should deny TMZ's motion to intervene. Intervention is not appropriate for the reasons suggested in Your Honor's questions. As Your Honor is well aware, intervention is only appropriate with leave of court where a third party seeks to, quote, file a pleading to intervene as a plaintiff or as a defendant to assert any claim or defense germane to the subject matter of the proceeding, unquote. Virginia Supreme Court Rule 3:14. As Mr. Tobin, to his credit, has conceded, TMZ is not asking to file a pleading. It cannot properly categorize itself either as plaintiff nor defendant, and it seeks to assert no claim or defense germane to the subject matter of this action. Moreover, even if the privilege were applicable, which is not the case here, the testimony intended is directly relevant and would outweigh any qualified privilege. Quote, an intervener must be asserting an interest that is part of the subject matter of the litigation, unquote, Hudson versus Jarrett, 269 Virginia 24 at 32. Here, as Mr. Tobin stated, TMZ seeks to protect potential information solicited from a third-party witness, which is in no way a matter before this court, citing Commonwealth versus Gill, 89 Virginia Circuit 323, a 2014 case denying a motion to intervene where the intervener filed it, quote, to protect a property right, not a matter before the court, unquote. The outcome of this trial will not affect TMZ, and it does not have a sufficient interest in the subject matter of this suit to intervene.
You just say yes.
See Texas
No,
Fletcher, Maiden, and Reed, PC versus Bank National
Can
Trust
you
Co.
please say yes or no with this part, please?
2013 Westlaw 5849140, granting, and this is distinguishing it, granting the motion to intervene where the intervener's liability would be affected by the outcome of the litigation. Finally, Your Honor, TMZ lacks standing to object to testimony by a third party in this action because TMZ, as Your Honor pointed out, is not being compelled to testify. TMZ's reliance on the Philip Morris case for the proposition that the privilege cannot be circumvented by seeking confidential source information from an employee is inapposite. 36 VA Circuit at 1. For one thing, as noted in that case, there is no testimonial privilege akin to that enjoyed under the Fifth Amendment, which would allow a reporter to refuse to appear before a grand jury and answer questions. And Philip Morris, as Your Honor is aware, the party issued a third-party subpoena for records to trace confidential sources. Philip Morris is inapposite here, as that case related, as this case is related to witness testimony, not records. As Your Honor suggested, TMZ's quarrel, if any, is with Mr. Tremaine to the extent that he had an NDA that was enforceable, applicable, and that's not what we're hearing from Mr. Tobin. So to the extent that TMZ, which is not exactly Edward R. Murrow, Your Honor, to the extent they have a beef, as it were, a cognizable beef, it is with Mr. Tremaine. It is not with Mr. Depp, and they clearly do not have standing. to assert or to intervene because they are not intervening as a party, plaintiff, or defendant. So we respectfully submit, to the extent the court disagrees, I can go into the arguments
That's
why
right,
the
sir.
privilege is inapplicable, but I will reserve that.
Thank you. All right, yes, ma'am?
Your Honor, I would like to weigh in from just a different perspective,
Okay.
and that is because we're trying to deal with some important issues of privilege, et cetera. But from our perspective, representing Ms. Hurd, we have issues with this witness separately, and I want to make them very clear for the record. This is somebody who should have been identified in discovery, was never. Second of all, it's not relevant whether, apparently what they're saying he's going to testify, and we have not had the opportunity to discover that, is he's going to claim that someone leaked to TMZ that Ms. Hurd was going to obtain the TRO on that Friday and also leak the video, the kitchen video with Mr. Depp being rather violent. I'm almost certain he's not going to claim it's Ms. Hurd, so I think it's never going to come in.
Ms. Berghoff, I understand all that argument. Do you
hearsay.
have any argument as to this particular motion?
No, my
Okay, well, then we can address
well,
you.
my point is, though, if you balance the prejudice versus the probative value, I don't even see how he can come in on foundation or hearsay or relevance.
That's just not part of this motion at this time. Thank you, ma'am. All right, Mr. Tobin, your motion, you get the last word, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. You know, I appreciate that the court kind of shook your head when he made the snarky comment that this is not Edward R. Murrow. Obviously, the First Amendment applies to everybody, citizens, the New York Times, or TMZ. And this is a First Amendment-based privilege. Your Honor, the Philip Morris case is actually a very good case to answer Your Honor's question about the intervention of somebody else in order to assert the privilege. There, ABC was a defendant in the case, and it moved in order to prevent other people, the phone company.
Right. But they were already in
airlines.
the case in that particular
I understand.
matter.
There is no other mechanism, though, and so you know it would be an interesting procedural issue for appeal, Your Honor, whether a journalism organization or anybody else who's a First Amendment holder would be denied intervention on a constitutional-based privilege. I also, just for the record and for the merits of the case, if I understood Mr. Chu correctly, he said this is not an issue in the litigation. This does not relate to an issue in the litigation. Well, if it's not an issue in the litigation, if it's not part of a prima facie part of the defense, part of the allegations of the complaint, if it's impeachment evidence, if it's collateral to the main issues in the case, under the Brown v. Commonwealth decision under the Virginia Supreme Court, under the application of that privilege in the Philip Morris versus ABC News, it is not supposed to be compelled in this case.
Which is, again, it's not being compelled, it appears.
Well, he is appearing by subpoena, and it is a compulsory process, and he will have an obligation unless he asserts privilege under oath. But it is our privilege, Your Honor. It's not an employee, a loyal or a rogue employee's privilege to waive on behalf of its employer. This is an unusual situation.
Tell me about it.
But the answers are there in the law.
This is eating in their lunch.
Concern.
This is not the first unusual situation in this case. I can
For
tell you,
either
for
of us,
Mr. Tobin.
for anybody here, I'm sure.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you coming in today, and I appreciate your
Oh,
arguments.
this is what
Yes,
the judge
sir.
said. This is
Thank
the-
you.
this is
All right,
the
in this
first.
matter, under Virginia Rules Supreme Court 3:14, a new party may intervene as a plaintiff or defendant to assert any claim or defense germane to the subject matter of the proceeding. A new party may not intervene unless they assert some right involved in the underlying litigation. A party is not entitled to intervene merely because a byproduct of the litigation adversely impacts them, and the decision to allow intervention is within the broad discretion of the trial court. Here, the rights asserted are not germane to the trial. The central issues in this case are whether defendant defamed plaintiff and whether plaintiff defamed defendant through a theory of vicarious liability. The issue of the confidentiality of sources has not come up as in other cases cited by EHM, which is the corporation that TMZ belongs to, is under their umbrella. In Brown versus the Commonwealth, there was an attempt by the criminal defendant to subpoena institutions in order to obtain the name of the confidential source. When the author of the article was subpoenaed, she refused to identify her confidential source on the stand. And in this case, it appears that the witness is willing to state the name of the confidential source without being compelled voluntarily. Whether that breaches a non-disclosure agreement between Mr. Tremaine and EHM is not germane to this matter and can be litigated in a separate matter if EHM so chooses. And while breaches of contract must be taken seriously, and the court does, any alleged breach is not germane to the underlying litigation here. That contractual action has no bearing on this case and is thus not germane to this litigation. Therefore, I'll deny the non-party EHM Productions motion to intervene.
Thank you, Your Honor. For the record, I've known Mr. Tobin for several years. I meant no snarkiness toward him.
Well, you're just a snarky guy. Yeah, Ashley, Mr.
Your Honor, I am concerned that we preserve the issue fully. And so,
for the record, yes,
for the
sir.
record. And so I would ask, may I have the opportunity to object when Mr. Tremaine is questioned by question?
No, sir, you're not a party to this case. However, I will note for your record your objection to his complete testimony on behalf of your client.
Right. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Your microphone, Ms. Burrow.
As with the Hicksville witness, Your Honor, I would ask that we could voir dire him before the jury to find out when he contacted counsel and when they became aware of it. And I think also, under the circumstances, in fairness, I think we should at least be able to ask him what he's going to claim.
Response.
Your Honor, I don't think that's appropriate. Certainly, I don't think a proffer is necessary or appropriate in this case.
I'm not going to do a proffer in this matter, okay? All right. Oh, Mr. Rottenborn, I
Sorry.
was almost at lunch.
I know, I'm so sorry. But I truly am the messenger here, because Mr. Murphy just informed me that he has to just clarify one thing about...
One clarification.
Okay,
Your
all
Honor.
right, okay.
I apologize.
That's fine. I think we need Ms. Myers.
And for this time, it is a... Oh, Jesus fucking Christ. Took a break, right? For lunch. And now this is going to be... This is going to be an hour from now. When this has been going on for about 15 isn't it happy? One of the one of testimony thing to this case because he's turned around and said that he has got no, what's the word I'm looking for? He will not, my words, pussyfoot around the old employers. Will name and shame them. She's happy at that.
All right. So court will be in recess. Let's come back at 2 so everybody gets an hour for lunch, okay? All right, 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock, so an hour. So an hour from now. Okay, good. So guys, that'll be me for an hour. Thank you for watching this part. See you in an hour. And YouTube, you'll see this later on whenever this is uploaded, okay? Yep, see you in an hour, guys, on Twitch.